Ciao Laziali all over the world. Welcome back to another episode of Lazio Lounge. It's not a great start of the season because after the impressive win against Napoli in an away game, Lazio last afternoon, to be honest, because it was a 3 o'clock kickoff, which is surprising knowing how hot is it in Italy in September. But we lost 3-1 against Juventus. And we have Alasdair here, even though he's melting. I don't know why. I don't know, Alasdair. Yes, we lost 3-1, but I thought Lazio played a good match. We made some stupid mistakes, but I thought Lazio didn't play that bad. I'm too optimistic this time.
Potentially, because I think that games are decided by moments, and there were far too many moments in that match where Lazio's attention slipped. I would probably put it that way. And I think that's been fairly characteristic at the start of this season, has been, especially defensively. I mean, I know we're going to talk about the defense a lot today because we've had questions about it, and it's clearly the biggest change from last season to this. But shipping another 3 goals to add to the pile we've already conceded this season, that's really what makes the difference. And obviously lacking a cutting edge up front too. So, you know, I can see where you're coming from in terms of ball possession and I guess game dominance in periods, but it's not really worth much if when you're in the final third at either side, you're not getting the results you want.
You talk about episodes, so let's go right through it. The first goal of Juventus, the McKennie ball, was it on? Was it out? We had a question from Alexander Pearson who said, against Napoli, we saw the offside of Zaccagni by creating a perfect 2D picture using a 3D model. To me, the picture available looked like the ball was still in play, but do they have the tech to show this perfectly in a top-down second D view to remove all questions? Before you answer this, the most annoying thing, Alasdair, was that they never showed a picture. After the game, they said, well, this is the picture that the VAR showed us, so the ball was in. Why did they show it at the end of the match, not like they do all the time after a couple of minutes? This is a huge question mark for me. I'm not sure the ball was in or out. What's your take on this?
I thought it was in. I'm sorry. I know it's probably not what you want to hear, but with these incidents, which do happen every now and again, there are always angles where people can see a gap between ball and line and therefore think the ball is out. But that's not really how it works. You know, obviously, the way it's decided whether ball's in or out is from a hawk-eye view. And if any of the ball is covering any of the line, then it's in. And from the angles I've seen, I think that if you switch to that view, the ball would be, at least some of it would be covering some of the line. The frustration that comes from this, as the question suggests, is that we're not shown that. I mean, I don't know to answer that question. I don't think they do have that Hawkeye technology for the sidelines of the pitch. Obviously, we see that when it's a decision goal or no goal, but you're not going to see it for a throw-in. But yeah, then that's what creates the controversy because that's what leads to the goal. And if they're not able to see it, we need to at least get an idea of how the decision is being made. But to answer your question, I think there wasn't enough to suggest that ball had gone out of play.
So we have a question from an old friend, Ramiel Gendi. What are your thoughts about our defense this season in the first 5 games? And was last season a freak one where we overachieved that much? 7 goals in 4 games, Alasdair, this season. 7 goals. It's true we allowed 3 goals yesterday from Juventus, but still, without this game, it was 4 goals in 3 games. A lot of goals conceded. And for me, the biggest problem is 85% of the goals we allowed were our mistakes. So this is where I'm concerned and really worried.
Yeah, where do you think this is coming from? Because if you look at the defense, it's unchanged. You look at the goalkeeper, he's unchanged. From my perspective, the thing that I'm seeing the most in these games as a running theme defensively is a bit of a disconnect between the defense and the midfield. And almost like it's a kind of tactical issue where, I mean, yesterday for Juve's second goal, the Chiesa goal, the defensive line is just far too deep, and Marusic is absolutely nowhere near Chiesa, but he's not near anyone. He's not marking anyone, and there's this kind of gap between the lines that players seem to keep finding space in. And I don't know whether this is because we've made a lot of changes in the midfield over the summer, or because it's, like the question suggests, a kind of complacency. You know, has this team decided after last season, okay, we're strong defensively now, we can work on other stuff? It's a bit of a mystery, but to me, I feel like the defense isn't always getting the support it needs, and it's not necessarily just on the back line. What about you?
I think we made some stupid mistakes. I mean, you were talking about the second goal. The third goal is embarrassing. I mean, Vlahovic is all alone, and Casale and Marusic allow him to stop the ball, bring him back down, and shot on target. You cannot afford this, especially against a great striker like Vlahovic. Against Genoa, Retegui is all alone. Provedel should have stopped better. Against Lecce, the second goal, the ball is in our penalty box for like 25 seconds and no one does nothing. Very similar to the Chiesa goal yesterday. So I think there's some mistakes. I was thinking about Casale in particular. If you remember last beginning of the season, Patrick will start instead of Casale. It looks to me that he's struggling, especially on the pitch. He's really unable to perform. I mean, he was very slow against Vlahovic yesterday. Pretty much the same thing against Napoli, where Romagnoli stepped up. So I'm not sure it's a tactical issue. I think it's probably a condition issue where some of our players are not 100% fit. And for this reason, I'm saying against Atletico Madrid, I hope Patrick starts instead of Casale.
Well, yeah, no, and this, I guess, is one of the reasons I was saying when we were rounding up the transfer window, that was my one area of concern, was that we didn't get any more reinforcements in that position. But yeah, I mean, it has also been, I guess, a difficult start to the season. If you think about the Vlahovic we're seeing this season is not the Vlahovic we saw last season. Retegui is new to the league, good striker. They did very well, actually, against Osimhen, weirdly, who's by far the best striker they've come up against. But, you know, it's been a testing season so far. And I think the one good thing yesterday was seeing Provedel being kind of back to his best in terms of some of the saves he was making. But then again, you know, it kind of reminds me of last season, where actually the start of last season was when Provedel was most impressive in terms of the saves he was making, the game-changing moments he was producing. But you don't really want your keeper to be doing that every week, because it suggests you're giving too much away. And actually, the more promising thing was when Provedel kept making all these clean sheets, he wasn't actually playing particularly amazingly, as in you weren't noticing him in all these games because Lazio weren't giving much away. So it's almost a repeat of last season in that way.
Yeah, the only difference probably is the schedule, the fixture. We played the Juventus and Napoli this year. Last year, we started against Bologna. Then it was, what was it, Torino? I don't remember. But anyway, in the first 4 games, we had already a clean sheet against Torino. Then we beat Inter at home. And then we drew against Sampdoria last second. And afterwards, the 5th game was the loss against Napoli, if you remember. So we didn't start very well last season, but at least we had 1 clean sheet. This year, we didn't even get close to a clean sheet, right? Because we conceded 2 goals against Lecce, one against Genoa, 1 against Napoli, 3 yesterday. So I thought defensive-wise, and I think that the biggest difference between last year was our defense, right? Because our attack is pretty much playing just like last year. So I think that's where the biggest difference. Obviously, let's not remember, Lazio played 4 games and we have just 1 home game, which is not easy, especially considering that the away games were at Napoli and Turin. So I think that didn't help, right, Alistair?
Yeah, exactly. And it's been a tough start, but, again, we've got another tough month coming up now, I mean, with Atletico Madrid's coming to Rome on Tuesday. We've got Milan coming up towards the end of the month away. Even the home games we do have against Torino and Monza are, ones we should be winning, but definitely ones you would put in the kind of awkward category. So this team needs to turn around soon. And the frustrating thing, I think, for us is that there was a lot of ways of looking at that Napoli result as being a turning point.
Yeah.
And saying, wow, okay, tricky start, but big result. That's Lazio back to the best. Let's kick on. But then you have the international break. The momentum gets taken out of things a bit, and starting with a defeat means that momentum is pretty much gone. And not just starting with a defeat, but starting with seeing that Napoli team really struggle against Genoa, and suddenly you're thinking, well, Rudy Garcia's Napoli is perhaps not Spalletti's Napoli.
But you can think also, well, we lost against Genoa. This is not that bad defeat we thought, right? You can see it both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have another question, but before I wanted to point out, Lazio have 3 weeks really, really tough, because you mentioned it a little bit. Tuesday, Lazio Atletico. Saturday, Lazio Monza. Wednesday, Lazio Torino. Then the weekend, I don't remember I think it's Saturday, Milan Lazio. Then away game to Celtic. Then home game against Atalanta. And that's it. Then there is another international break. So you see, these 6 games are quite complicated, quite difficult. I would say that Lazio Monza is the easiest one, right? Then you have Torino, that has always been very tough to us. Milan away. I mean, we won twice in 32 years against Milan. Celtic away, it's a difficult game. Atalanta, it's not easy. Atletico Madrid, etc. So 6 games, very tough, very close to each other. That could tell us the future in Champions League and in Serie A. Because, I mean, if you win both games in Champions League, you're pretty qualified or close to, right? But even if you don't lose against Atletico or win against Celtic, well, you're a very good situation, right?
Yeah. So how do you think is the best way to approach this then? Because the thing we've not really seen so much yet has been any particular change. You said before the defense is the same, the attack is the same. The only change we've really seen in the midfield has been Kamada starting. And so Sarri is pretty much trusting the same players who achieved second place last season, which is understandable. But now is the moment, really, when you get a run of games like this, that the benefit of having all these new signings come in should show. But the question is more like, do we need to be making these changes anyway to try and inject something else into this team? Is it time for Rovella to come into the team for Cataldi? Is it time to have Castellanos to have a chance? Is it time for Guendouzi to be put in from the start? There are quite a few new players. Isaacs, we don't really know what he's going to offer yet. Pellegrini. So I guess we're going to learn probably, hopefully, more about all these new players in the coming few weeks than we have done so far, where it's been very familiar and a bit uninspiring because these bad results have been coming with the same players.
Yeah, we have Hugo Lamb and Stefanus Hendry who's asking this question, especially on Tati Castellanos. Should we give a start to him and Guendouzi in the next match? Or Hugo is asking if Tati should start against Monza. Honestly, Alistair was surprised that Guendouzi didn't start against Juventus. And the fact that he came so late in, it made me think he will start against Atletico Madrid. But I don't know how many players you can rotate for the Champions League game, but definitely against Monza, I think Tati Castellanos should be starting. Isaksen, if he doesn't start in Champions League, should be starting against Monza. In midfield, I think Guendouzi is going to start on Tuesday. But again, Rovella came in yesterday. I thought he played decent. He's not 100% fit, but he had a good match. Let's not forget, we still have Vecino, guys. Vecino pretty much didn't play a single minute. So I hope, and we need to rotate much more than we did so far. Well, we pretty much didn't do nothing so far. But now, playing every 2 days, and finally, we said it how many times, Alice, this season? We finally have options. Midfield, Kamada, Guendouzi, Vecino, Rovella. Basic is out of the Champions League list, but we have so many options that we have to rotate. So my question is, do you keep the same 11 with Guendouzi starting for the Champions League and you rotate everything against Monza, or do you mix a little bit? Like, for example, Pedro experience in the Champions League game could be useful, right?
I just don't see him rotating everything in that way. You know, it's Monza are a good side. They're like a mid-table, top half of the table side. And I just don't see Sarri, because he never really has before now, being someone who's going to go and change, 6 or 7 players in the starting 11 for that kind of game. And it's kind of difficult to work out how he's going to go about it, because if these players are going to be given chances, when are they going to come? Because every game is important. I mean, this is the thing about being in the Champions League. You can't see your midweek European matches as opportunities to do that in the way that we used to with the Europa League, to terrible results generally. But yeah, now the midweek games require your absolute best 11. But it seems too risky and too unlikely to me that he would suddenly throw in Castellanos, Isaksen, Guendouzi, Rovella, everyone else, and make that big a change for the league games. So, and the other thing is, it's taken this run of few games for Kamada to start feeling like he knows where he is in the team, and it would with any new signing. It takes a bit of time to settle. But I think Kamada in the last couple of games has shown far more than he did in the first couple of games, which is promising. So then it seems a bit harsh to me to be kind of throwing him out of the team. I don't know. It's a difficult situation, because there are certain players who it's obviously very hard to move. You don't drop Ciro without consequences. You don't drop Alberto without consequences. It's very hard to move, Provadel or Romagnoli or certain other fixtures in this team. So I just don't know how he's going to go about doing it, is my answer. I think it'll be very interesting to see, but I'd be very surprised to see him make huge changes in the Monza game.
I understand what you're saying, but I mean, if Ciro plays on Tuesday and on Saturday, he's not ending the season, or at least he's ending the season in February. We have to rotate. We have to, especially now with the Champions League. Obviously, you have to probably play your best team in the Champions League against Atletico Madrid, and maybe give an option to your backup against Monza. But I think you need to rotate. I think you have to. We have a question that I think we're going to get every single podcast. Per Nielsen is asking, the loss of Milinkovic have been massive, to have been so important both in defense and attack for years. Obviously, we lost Milinkovic-Savic. He was a terrific player, one of the best, even though last year he didn't play at his best. But are we worse than last year without Sergei, or are we better? I mean, we have Kamada, Guendouzi, Vecino. I think we have more depth. Obviously, Milinkovic-Savic is a special player. But I think, did we lose something? Are we better now?
Well, I think perhaps the defensive contributions of Sergei are something that's gone unnoticed a bit. It's something I repeatedly tried to talk about while he was at Lazio, was especially how much ground he covered. That went unnoticed a lot, because he never looked like he was in a particular hurry to get anywhere, but he always covered huge amounts of ground in every match. His physical presence was a huge asset, and built both ends of the pitch in defense and in attack. The way he intercepted the ball. So although he's most famous for his creative, his attacking weapons, I think that is something that Lazio perhaps struggled with, going back to my original point from the start, in terms of how that midfield defends. I don't know. I mean, it's making Lazio play in a different way. I think that's clear already this season, is that Alberto is taking on more responsibility than ever. And it's almost got to a point in the last couple of games where it's looking like, right, well, when Alberto plays, this team plays. Because there was a moment after conceding the first goal where it looked like the Napoli game all over again. It was kind of like, right, Alberto has turned it on. He's starting to get things moving. He was at the fulcrum of that chance, the Felipe Anderson chance, which was created through that nice passing move. Yeah. And I thought, wait, is this the Napoli game all over again? It's just going to turn like that, and Alberto's going to lead us through. But he, it's, in one way, it's good to see him taking on so much responsibility. But on the other side, it feels like in these first few games, perhaps we're already relying on him a bit too much to do that without Sergei.
But you have Kamada, who you were mentioning, have improved a lot. So I think we have many options. One of the most concerning part, we talked about defense. We have to talk about, we didn't shot too many times on target. And this is not the first time that happened this year, right? I thought we put the ball in the box a lot of time, but we didn't convert these chances into something concrete. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Ciro didn't have a single chance yesterday. And even against Napoli, he hardly had a chance. Are you getting concerned about this? Is there something wrong with Ciro, or do you think our way of playing is the problem? We are not focusing on Ciro anymore.
No, I mean, he's not started the season brilliantly. Obviously, over the international break, he had to deal with all the usual crap he has to deal with around international breaks. Probably even worse this time than usual. And, that will affect a player. I have so much respect for him, the way he has dealt with all that over the years and the way he's continuously proved people wrong, but it must weigh on him. But regardless of that, I mean, is he still the guy who's going to be getting 20 plus goals a season? I don't know. I wouldn't be that surprised, but I do think taking the burden of responsibility off him a bit wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. Going back to the Tati question before, I think Tati does need a start sooner or later. What I probably wouldn't want to do is start him in a completely new front line. I'd quite like to chuck Tati in with that Zaccagni and Anderson front line to just see how he does with the first choice team. Because we finally got the Vice Immobile, so we want to see him in action. We want to see what he can do. And because he's come from MLS, there's La Liga, there's such a mystery around how he's going to compete in Serie A. So it'd be nice to see.
But the fact is that when he came in yesterday, he hardly touched the ball. He didn't have any chances at all. So I don't think it's all on Ciro, this problem. I think it's the team that it's not providing assists or good chances to Ciro Immobile or the number 9, because when Ciro came off and Tati came in, again, Tati was pretty much invisible. And I don't blame Tati for this. I think if you don't give the ball to your number 9, he can do not that much, right? He cannot create chances from himself.
No, but we're yet to really work out what kind of a player he is because of the limited game time. I mean, I think I've got the answer, to be honest, Vittorio. I think the answer is 2 words. It's Matteo Guendouzi, because all we've seen from him is that he is an attacking wrecking ball who's just going to come on and cause chaos in the opposition defense. So maybe we never want to see him again, because his cameo against Napoli was so brilliant that it won't get any better.
I have to say that I was a little bit concerned. I thought he was saying Bastos, but Bastos is just one word. So that's where I thought, oh, no, he's not saying Bastos. But yeah, again, I was honestly surprised to not see Guendouzi starting against Juventus. And, you know, with Kamada coming back from the national team, luckily he didn't go to Japan, so he was in Europe. So he didn't have a long trip. But I thought that Guendouzi could have started. And as you mentioned, Kamada played well. I thought Kamada and Luis Alberto was the best player on the pitch yesterday for us. But you were mentioning starting Tati with a starting attack. Don't know. Felipe Anderson and Zaccagni didn't play really well yesterday, or at least for me. People are saying, even I don't know if you saw the Italian team playing on Wednesday. People were saying, yeah, Zaccagni played really well. I don't remember dribbling past once his opponent. He did it once, but he was very lucky because they lost the ball, etc. I'm not seeing the same Zaccagni we saw last year.
Yeah, but even the tail end of last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like Zaccagni as a player, but he is one of these guys who risks falling into the trap of being quite predictable. He does like to do the same thing over and over again, which is kind of make a beeline for the touchline and try and cut the ball back in and take players on one-on-one. And he's really good at doing that, but I feel like he does have the ability to mix it up a bit more. I mean, I guess there's a more interesting question, a bigger question around once a team has overachieved in the way the last, you know, let's not beat around the bush, finishing second was an overachievement for what we expected last season from that team. But once something like that has happened, how long do you stay loyal to those players before deciding to change things? And obviously the team that has been picked so far has pretty much been the team that was picked every week in getting that second place finish. But how long does that go on? Do they deserve the loyalty, or does it need to change quicker?
But I don't agree on loyalty. I think you have to pick the best team available. And probably till yesterday, this was the best team because Zaccagni knew the movement better than Isaksen. And the only change you made was Kamada because you didn't have any more Sergej. Otherwise, I guess Sergej would have started. But I think now, and we saw it with Rovella, I thought Rovella played better than Cataldi. And this is something we mentioned it already. I think Rovella is going to be the starter going forward. But at the same time, honestly, Alistair, if Zaccagni play like this, I would give Isaksen a chance. I think the biggest question mark is that Isaksen played on the other side. So the replacement of Zaccagni is Pedro, who doesn't look to be very fit. So that's the reason why I think Zaccagni is starting. But maybe you can move Felipe Anderson on the other side and start Isaksen on the right. If Carsten is listening to us, I hope you're right saying that Isaksen is raw talent and that he's really an interesting player, because I think he's going to start very soon, and I hope he starts and then perform well as Carsten was hoping, because honestly, loyalty in football doesn't work that much. You have to play your best players. So if Zaccagni continue like that, you have to give other an option. And at this point, I think we have to make the same decision on Ciro. I mean, let's give Tati Castellanos an option. Not tomorrow, probably. Not in Champions League, probably. But rather against Monza and see how things go. And then you start rotating. We mentioned the fixture. You cannot play Ciro every 2 days, especially when you're playing against Milan, Atalanta, Torino, etc. I think you need to rest a little bit. Right? So loyalty, don't think it works in football.
Yeah. I think most coaches would probably agree with you on that. But yeah, I think it would be good to throw in some of these players before. I mean, I do feel like as well this team could do with a wild card. You know, like for opposition coaches and analysts looking at Lazio, they can pretty much just find their notes from last season and use them again. because they're still playing pretty much the same style, pretty much the same players. So I think having someone like Isaacson, if he was the guy to kind of provide a bit of unpredictability, Castellanos, Kamada, there's Guendouzi, there's a few guys who are new to the league who could be the kind of wild card talent to mix things up a bit. And I think that's just how it feels a bit to me at the start of this season is I think it's been a little bit deflating for fans getting these results because we've got these results using, pretty much exactly the same team playing pretty much exactly the same football. So it's not like you're getting bad results in the pursuit of something greater. So I do hope that changes soon. And hopefully, like the point you made about the home games is a good one, because that's the kind of thing that can really bring a team to life a bit. So hopefully the start of the Champions League will be a moment for that, because it's the biggest game of the Champions League for Lazio. Is the first one. It's the first game in the Champions League for a few years. And the players are going to be hopefully up for that, and potentially that can be a big moment in the season.
And can we say something that we mentioned a lot of time in the past? In Europe League, usually the stadium was pretty much empty. We said it often, right? This time, it looks like it's going to be nearly full, because we made like 20,000 season tickets for the Champions League, and we already sold the same amount of tickets. So we should be a lot at the stadium next Tuesday. And we mention it often, right, in Europe League, saying that it's not the same playing in a stadium half empty. Well, it's not the same playing in a stadium full. So I think this will have a massive impact on the game, hopefully. So that's another very important point we have to mention. So that's really positive.
And Atletico Madrid just got pumped 3-0 by Valencia. So
yeah.
Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for us.
Well, the thing that annoys me a little bit is I'm reading like Atletico Madrid is a terrible team. It's still Atletico Madrid, guys. It's still a very good team. They can have bad moments, but it's still a very good team. The other thing I want to ask you, Alison, because we mentioned a lot of Ciro, but you mentioned even Luis Alberto. He needs to rest as well, right? He cannot play every single game. What's the alternative? Do we have an alternative to Luis Alberto? Do you play Kamada, Guendouzi, or I don't know, who can play instead of Luis Alberto?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is Kamada. I don't think there's any player who's obviously who has the same ability as Alberto, but Kamada is probably the closest thing we've got to being that kind of attacking midfielder. But I think this team does need to learn to play in different ways, and not rely on Alberto for creativity. The creativity should come from the collective, from the system, from the structures, rather than from, a policy of give the ball to Alberto and see what he can do. And God, there's a lot of great players in this team. They just need to, I don't know, get their confidence back, find a way of rediscovering a bit of magic again, because the Napoli game wasn't very long ago, and that was a fantastic performance for an hour or so.
Yeah, but again, against Juventus, we didn't play that bad. I mean,
yeah,
I think they took their chances. This is the biggest difference. They took their chances. We didn't.
So do you think it's just a question of eliminate the individual errors and find more composure in attack, and we're okay?
Well, you said it like it's, a stupid thing. It's very important. I mean, if they don't change the rule, football wins who score more goals. So if you score more goals and don't concede goals, you usually win, right?
That is cutting analysis. I like that.
I mean, when they're going to say that ball possession is going to decide who's going to win games, then we're going to focus only on ball possession. But at the moment, who score more goals win games. And if you concede 2 goals and don't score, then it's going to be pretty much difficult, right?
Is the big climactic finish to this podcast that we needed, was the razor sharp, moment to say that football games are won by who scores more goals. It's good.
Yep. And Alistair, let's tell your friends where you are. You are in France, right? When did you move there?
I arrived in Nice yesterday.
Okay. So Napoli, Lazio, you were in Italy, right?
Yes.
Okay. So since you moved to France,
it continues. Lazio don't like me being away. I told you.
So we have to hope that you come back before Lazio Atletico Madrid.
No, I'm away until Sunday now, so I'm going to miss the Atleti game. I'm sorry, everyone.
Okay, so I'm going to bet we're going to lose.
Well, look, it's you who's mentioning this now. You're contradicting yourself at this point.
Okay. Thanks again, Alistair, for joining me, and enjoy your trip in France. And we're going to be back after Lazio Atletico Madrid, so on a special podcast during the week. So always, if Alistair is available and not partying all night long.
Classic.
Yeah, I know. Take care, guys, and obviously rate and review the podcast and share it with friends. Take care. Good job.
Cheers.
Wow, even clapping.